it's like that diamond in the rough. Persons, you don't realize how important it is or how vital it is, because persons tend to just give it that first glance. So at this time, while we wait for the other two persons, I'm gonna share my screen and basically share with you a video. It's based in Australia, where we have somebody talking about the potentials in the area of records and information management. And I just wanted to point out that sometimes it depends on where you are that you really see like the full bloom or the fruits of that profession. And for me, the Australians really have it down packed. They're serious about it. So for them, records management extends from the top down. So within their whole structure, their whole system, they have legislation that gives that type of support required to drive the whole records management concept forward. And so I'll just share with you a perspective from that end.
Trying to decide which career to choose for your future. Will I like it? Can I get a job? Does it pay well? Well, I'm going to show you one industry you should definitely consider. It's the records and information management industry. Information is one of the most vital assets any organisation has. Any information which provides evidence of business, such as accounts, customer information, product orders, etc., are all critical assets. As a records and information management professional, you would help identify, organise, maintain, retrieve and dispose of information, amongst other tasks. Your job would be to help management make better decisions. You would be working in teams with all different kinds of people within your organisation. It's challenging and it's interactive.
We do project management, we do IT implementations, we look after training and development, we do change management, we do business analysis. In the past, government always managed records that were paper-based, but now we're moving to a digital age where records are electronic.
The records manager is not just an archivist, and I think traditionally they were archivists, but today they are people who are at the forefront of that process.
You can work in so many different industries and organisations, and you could work all over the world. You could become a boss or go into your own business. The opportunities are endless. So are there many jobs in records and information management? Well, every medium to large business needs records and information managers. So there are plenty of jobs available in the future, and it's growing.
It's a definite growth area. The sorts of skills that we're looking for these days in terms of managing electronic information are very hard to find.
So what kind of skills will you need? Well, you need to enjoy a challenge and have the ability to adapt to new situations. You need to be a confident communicator, good negotiator, flexible, an analytical thinker, and you need to like learning new skills. Technology is challenging the industry to constantly develop and grow. If you like science or law, computers or management, this career could be for you. It's versatile.
If you love technology and love Web 2 and you're in Facebook all the time, you're on LinkedIn, you're constantly SMSing or MMSing your friends, you have a whole IT area that you can go down as well.
You will be working with professionals and management to solve problems and work out ways to do things in a better way. It's very exciting. So does it pay well? Well, the starting rates are around $35,000 to $40,000 per year, similar to lawyers and accountants starting out. This could grow after a few years to $40,000 to $60,000. As your experience grows, you could earn over $100,000 a year. That's pretty good money.
It's a very well-paid job, and you can definitely work your way up as well.
If you want to check on education options, see your vocational officer. There are currently 2 different levels you can take, vocational and tertiary. And these can be delivered through all sorts of different ways, from full-time study to online. So if you want to work in an industry that's growing, is challenging, delivers variety and pays well, please consider the records and information management industry. For more information...
Okay. Any comments with regard to that? Any comments, guys?
Good evening. Can you hear me?
Yes, good evening. Good
Okay.
evening. Go ahead.
I think it was pretty straightforward.
So basically, persons in this session hello?
Pardon me?
Oh, I was just saying. Can you guys hear me?
Yes, ma'am.
Oh, okay, good. So I was just asking with regard to the video in terms of it, although it's not in this setting, basically the opportunities still remain the same. And I just wanted to know right now if any of you are actively involved in or just wanting to know more about the profession.
I think I'm a colleague of Roosevelt's. I think our department is gearing towards that direction of going digital. We presently now where we are pretty much still dealing with files.
Okay, so you haven't transitioned, but
Not as yet.
Okay. Oh, okay. That's okay. That's fine. All right. So I would just like to welcome you all again to this session, Fundamentals of Records Management. And we are basically going to do just that, focus on those fundamentals that are core to making your program blossom and grow with regard to being able to effectively manage all cycles within your records and information management sphere. And basically, we do have a text that I recommend. Miguel is gonna try and see if he can get this for us, but it's called Fundamental. It's Records and Information Management, Fundamentals for Professional Practice. So we'll look to hear from Miguel with regard to the text. And basically the course itself, we are gonna spend about 7 weeks. The 7th week actually will be the exam week. And in each time we meet, it'll basically highlight a key area for records management. So module 1 consists of sharing information and reviewing the concept of what is a record, what records management is all about, and why we are going to have to utilize records management in being able to facilitate helping our organizations become stronger in the area of information management. Components of a program would also be another area we'll cover. We'll talk about issues impacting records management. We'll also focus on basically tools to facilitate it. And also we'll look at the electronic records management sphere. So like Brooke mentioned, they're basically working with paper records at the moment. They intend to migrate. So in terms of thinking about migration and that type of thing, this will not get into the nuts and bolts of IT connection, etc. But it will tell you as a professional in records and information management what's needed to get the job done. Granted, IT has they're the hardware, software type people, but you provide the frameworks for making it work in terms of the getting the right information to the right people at the right time. And it's critical that those 3 R's are a part of your mandate, your goal. The final session basically will focus on technology. And we know that today, technology is indeed a big driver, a big component in terms of how we transact, how we do business, etc. And that means that the information that's needed now is no longer involved in a heavy paper-based process, but it's electronic. But that does not change the fact that although it's electronic, those same core fundamentals that you use to manage your paper, you still need to do that for the electronic. It's just that the media is different, the environment is different. But the same way you have to take into consideration security for your physical files, that has to be applied in the electronic realm. The same way you create information to start the process, it's done electronically, but you still have to have the same core things there. You still have to have your indexing. You still have to have those markers that indicate this is the actual record, and in the electronic realm, there are a lot of things that can be manipulated. So to ensure that you do have the right things in place, you do need to still have those core frameworks down. So that's your policies, your procedures, your processes. You would have had those when you did your paper records management duties. So now, how do we translate that electronically? What is it we look for so that electronically we have that same control, security, integrity, etc. And basically, in terms of what's expected with regard to assignments and exam, this course I would provide. Like I say, we'll have a book we'll go over. So I think the one main thing that we're gonna have as an exercise as we go through and we discuss the various life cycle components in records management, it's a small group, so probably we can share, I'll confirm, but right now, you have the process involved in creating records, then you have to basically secure them, you use them, and eventually you dispose of them. And to do that, it would require certain things like an initial assessment. You would also be required to have an inventory. You would also be required then to formulate a policy regarding your corporate records. In addition to formulating a policy, then, once you have that policy, you have certain procedures, you have certain processes that are required in order to make sure you're well able to monitor and audit to ensure compliance with that policy. So I will provide more information with regard to the particular assignment. There may be little quizzes along the way, pretty much just to see that we all understand the content and we're on track. But I encouraged you too that as we discuss a topic and go through certain things about that topic, to do your own research as well. There's a lot of information, a lot of companies that are online, they share their policy documents, they share their retention schedules. So you get an idea, you can better understand the topic. And if you're in the position that you basically have to provide input, or you have to design or develop one of those documents or tools, you have the background knowledge to begin, to start, and actually get to that implementation phase, because it's not a cut and dry solution. You basically have to start somewhere, and that's a challenge. A lot of people are always trying to get that perfect policy, that perfect schedule for their company. And so what happens when you look 5 or 6 years down the road, they haven't implemented anything, because they're still trying to, and the same time that they're trying to get this perfect document, things are changing, things are evolving, new things are coming on stream. And I say that because as a result of COVID-19, a lot of places were not really on board with going electronic. They were not into digitizing very heavily. Okay, but as a result of COVID-19, we see more persons now trying to get on board with making sure their company can operate in a remote environment. Okay, so I also have another image to share at this time, basically to kind of give you a visual of where, when we talk about records management, where it fits in the scheme of things. If we were to think of this as a information tree. So just give me a moment to share my screen. Okay, let me find that document. So you can all see this, right? Is it too small?
It's kind of small. You could probably bring it in a little bit more.
Okay. All right, let me
Could
see.
maximize.
I'm gonna try and see if I could get it to open up, because it's from another document. Let me
The
just
top right might allow you to do it.
no, it's moving the thing. Let me, okay. All right, but basically what I have here is just a representation of how if you were to think of a tree, at the bottom of the tree, corporate activities and databases, documents, etc. We're at that stage where what we call creators. So at the root, at the heart, is where there's this whole generation of records and information. Okay, so each company, based on what your function is, you then generate information, and it's that raw data and those raw, which you have unstructured files. If you're thinking about electronically, when we create a Word document, when we do Excel spreadsheet, that type of thing. So ongoing corporate activities is generating information. And so because of that, at the root, we then have the importance to have this record keeping regime. Okay, so that the flow of the records, information, etc., can be properly, what should I say? It can flow properly into the relevant areas that it's needed. Because like I said, we need to get the right record to the right person at the right time. And that's ultimately the goal of doing records management. Okay, so that information itself then because of this regime, can now be filtered to where it needs to go, such as for research and management reports. Also, you may have statistics that's compiled from the information. You can also have technical literature, database resources, etc., used to call the information, sort it so that those persons who need it can get it. Okay, the information can be generated for references, scholarly references, academic journals. Okay, you can have general knowledge compilations, and then you eventually at the top of the tree, which is like the fluff, you can have your media, internet information. You can also have books and magazines, etc. But at the root, at the core of that is the fact that we are creators of information that has to be managed in order for the users to be able to utilize it in the ways necessary. So at this time, I just wanted to find out if there's any comments or queries or questions with regard to what we intend to be focusing on within the course. Okay. So one thing that I wanted to also bring to your attention is I really would like for us to get in a habit of just when we listen to the news, take note of those that they link or they have reference to poor records management. And I would say that in recent times, there's been numerous incidences, there's been numerous reports, there's been numerous, what shall I say, even criminal activities that relate to poor records management practices. At this time, I don't know if anyone would like to share a particular thing that they think may have been the result of poor practices with records and information management. If not, okay, what do you say to instances where we have seen persons being brought before the courts because of not only crimes that are considered, or not only because they may have probably gotten away with funds that they would have stolen, etc., but the fact that in certain instances, things were overlooked or they weren't reported. So what we see now is the tip of the iceberg, that they now have to go before the courts due to these things. We have breaches that have occurred, breaches with regard to, and we look at them as security breaches, but those security breaches could also have come about because there were not the proper protocols or procedures in place that would have allowed persons to have access to information they should not have had. We've seen incidences where social media, a lot of people just put things out there because you're forwarding, you're forwarding, you're forwarding. And just to, as a case in point, there's something going around now where there was a particular doctor that made a comment with regard to the vaccine that's out. And whoever had access to it, what did they do? They shared it. So now the doctor's coming back and saying that was personal information he shared with someone who should have known better because they are professional as well, and that was something in confidence. So there's repercussions as well. We see where we have a pastor now being put before the courts because of comments that were made and put on Facebook. And I'm saying all of that to say, normally when we think about managing information or records, a lot of times persons kind of limit themselves to thinking maybe just the paper. But like I said, we're in a digital era now. And so we have additional places that records are being stored or kept. So things like social media attracts another type of record that has to be managed as well. So when we look at those principles and procedures and policies, etc., we're not only talking about addressing them to your physical records. That policy or that document that you create should speak to your electronic records as well. And so all of that is a part of what we talk about when we say we must manage our records and manage them well. Okay, to manage our records, we fall under the umbrella of what is called information governance. With that, it means that as a subunit of governance, records and information management has to have those policies, processes, procedures, etc., in place in order to function properly. Without that, we don't have that, what we would call, we won't have the teeth to do what we have to do. So if your senior management team has not sanctioned your program, if you do have a program, that can be a problem. That can make your work a bit more stressful and difficult because you have those persons who are not willing to provide the support or make the change that is necessary in order for you to have an effective records management program. So some of the things that we will also look at, I guess, would be the fact that, it's not a one-man band. You have to have collaboration. You have to have buy-in. Your work entails working, as it showed in the brief video, with a slew of other professionals. So this is more a team-oriented profession. You basically have to be able to talk to legal. You need to talk to legal because the legal department is the place that you would have to get advice with regard to laws and regulations that impact what you do. In the Bahamas, we have something like the Public Records Act. We have also new legislation with regard to computer use and misuse. We have other legislation with regard to coming up soon, freedom of information. So as a records professional, these are things you definitely would have to be aware of so that when you are structuring your program, and I say it like that, your program, because in certain sectors or certain disciplines, there are some things that will be more important than others. So in your program, you will basically be making sure that you have, it's important for you to comply with certain legislation. So those, your program may have to have more, more teeth, more, what shall we say, penalties with regard to persons who choose not to follow the outline of your program. So right now, I want you to, if before we really start focusing on one component, I just want persons here to share with me at this time some of the things that you envision something like records management doing for your organization. And we'll start with Roosevelt. Mr. Roll.
Yes, ma'am. Thank you. Um, so hearing you speak, um, it kind of like is an echo from what I hear my manager talk about, and I didn't really understand how important records are. You know, she would always push us, telling us that records are important. You know, every detail in the file is important. So I think what I tried to get from this is to fully appreciate the whole record keeping process and see how best we can make sure push it in the company as well. Because like you said, before COVID and Dorian, before the hurricane actually, nobody was really interested in digitalizing and record keeping, but now it became vital because of like I said, I think during the introduction we lost about, I mean, 10,000 of our files got wet, you know, so we had to physically dry them. And like management has still not approved for us to start digitalizing. So it's still a push. But now that I'm going through this course, I'll be well equipped to now say, well, this is the case. And I see you make comments in reference to policies and retention schedules and stuff like that. I didn't know it was really that deep.
Oh, okay.
So I have a better appreciation for it.
Yes. So tell me something, the records that were damaged. So you did not have contact with a vendor that could have, you know, we have, like I say, this profession is vast and people get into it and they find a niche that they like. So you have vendors who are actually in the business of helping companies when they suffer a loss or a crisis impacting paper records. You have persons who can dry them. You have persons who can treat the mold or mildew if you have that.
Oh yeah, so we kind of did that. We basically within ourselves, the employees dried the files ourselves. But there is a record archiving vendor on the island called RAM, and they're storing the files and kind of procuring them for us, and they're basically providing them on a need basis. So they're scanning them to us because we can't bring the mold files and back in the office.
Right, definitely.
So we utilize them.
Yes. And that's the thing. in the profession, you get to know those people you need to help
Yes.
the job done. Because
Mm-hmm.
even with digitizing, you realize that that's an upfront investment. It's quite heavy in terms
Mm-hmm.
of having to get scanners, having to train your people to scan. So you have to weigh your options. Is
Yes, ma'am.
you're gonna take on that project internally, or are you gonna outsource that to a vendor? And when you go and outsource it to a vendor, you need to make sure you have all your ducks in a row. You know
Mm-hmm.
what you expect from them. You also know what it's going to cost you. And
Yes.
go and inspect that vendor place, because you want to see that where they are working or operating from, it's secure. There's no issues with regard to any leakage, or in terms of the way they have their set up, that there's no chance that what you provide to them is going to be copied or leaked or taken.
Exactly.
Yeah. So you got pushed into the water.
Basically, yeah, which was a good thing, you know. That's how,
Okay.
like I say, you have to, I guess, prepare for all things. But we got pushed
Mhm.
into the water.
Okay, so that's you and Brooke that work together?
Yes,
Yes.
ma'am.
Oh,
Yes.
wow. Okay. Okay.
Yeah.
Good,
So
good. So what do you guys have in place now? Do you have any basic records management framework? When I say that, have you got together and formulated like a corporate policy with regard to records management, which kind of outlines the broad objective to make sure your records are safe, make sure you only people who need to have access, those type of details are in there. Who's responsible for what? Do you have like um, the person who would basically be like your records manager? And how many employees does your company have? May I ask? Because depending on the size of the organization, sometimes you can use that one person. But if you have an organization where you have over 200, 300 people, you basically have to put out arms. And when I say put out arms, I mean you have to appoint persons in the various areas to be your liaison, to be your coordinator, so that once you have a framework in place, you can then look to those persons, once you've trained them, to do what they need to do to keep that particular unit functioning in compliance with your policies, your procedures, etc. So do you have like a large staff, or are you less than 50?
yeah, we're definitely less than 50.
Oh, okay.
And the people that would have direct access to the files
Mm-hmm.
is limited basically to our department
Mm-hmm.
and the legal department.
Oh, okay. Okay, so that's good. It shouldn't be too bad for you guys, because it's a relative. Now, like I say, that doesn't mean you're not going to have pushback and stuff like that, because you have persons who basically are not interested in change, and
Mhm.
you can't let them deter you. You work with those who are interested, and somehow they tend to come along once they start to see the benefits of what a program brings.
Yeah.
So
Yes,
Well,
ma'am.
with
I
you
think the
guys, you've
company has been
you've
looking
you've
for,
made that commitment. Your management is on board. That's what I'm trying to find out.
yes, it's actually
Oh,
management that pushed us to take the course.
okay.
Yeah.
All right. So that's a good thing.
Mhm.
That's a good thing that your management is on board. And so basically, your process would involve getting to building that framework. So you would be now in that collaborative mode where you're meeting, you're trying to draft out some basic rules regarding what's going to happen with your records. And then you need to do an assessment so you know what you have. So I don't know whether you've already done that and that's how you got to this phase, because like I said, you literally were pushed in because of what happened to you. So did you get to save everything in terms of the drying out, or you lost some of your information?
I think we definitely lost
You lost some,
some of the information, yeah.
right? And so,
And honestly, the company has been looking at going digital for a while.
mhm,
And for whatever reason, they just haven't.
mhm,
And Dorian just was like a wake up call, like to say, okay, this is, important, especially in these times.
okay,
So
yes,
hopefully, um, we'll get there sooner
yes,
than later.
definitely. Like I said, it's a journey, and you don't go anywhere by staying still. So the good thing is you've taken the initiative and you're ready to start.
Mhm.
So let that start be something that's interactive. So basically, for you right now, you basically like in an assessment mode, because you need to know what's there, what's left now. Okay, and based on what's left now, what you would then have to do is, with what's left, you create what we call a retention schedule. Okay, and so based on what's left, what you still need in terms of the business value, you want to then be able to say, this is how long this is retained, etc. You'd also then want to, after you have that, you'd want to educate persons on what is the retention time frame for the information they're creating. Okay, and then you would want to have processes in place so that in addition to monitoring, you're now able to work that retention time frame clock into a way that you're tracking it, and at the time that the information is no longer needed, then you and eventually dispose of it. Now if your information is information that has to be kept permanently or forever, and you're planning to go full stream digital, then you would have to have something in place within your IT department. You'd have to have a special software for preservation, because although we say, oh, we're going digital, when you go digital, information that you have to keep for excessively long periods of time, you have to maintain that, you have to manage that, because systems change, versioning, et cetera, et cetera. So if that information is permanent, every time there's upgrades, et cetera, you have to make sure you're carrying over that information so that it's not lost. So that's why you have to have management support, because some of these things require funding, and not a little bit, but a lot of funding when you think of it long term. So, Moss, are you able to share something with us with regard to your organization, or even why you decided to join us?
Good afternoon.
Good
Hi,
afternoon.
everyone. Okay, the company where I work, it's one main company, and then there are two subsidiaries.
Mm-hmm.
Well, that means definitely basically three companies under one roof, so there are different areas with different records. Right
Okay.
now, they're not consolidated.
Okay.
And it is an issue because, for example, we're doing an audit now, and the
Okay.
auditor basically has to go to different people to get different information,
Mm-hmm.
and that's becoming an issue because one of the managers is out on leave,
Mm-hmm.
and you're trying to find something, and then she's the only one who knows where to look. Whereas
Yeah.
if we have everything consolidated, especially
Mm-hmm.
important information, we can go in one general area and pull everything for the auditors. Now,
Mm-hmm.
day-to-day information, of course, they can keep that. But when it's something that we know that affects the entire organization,
Mhm.
that's something that should be kept in a general area that it can be accessed by anyone.
Right. So Moss, tell me something. So you're still paper-based?
Mostly,
Oh, okay. Any
mostly.
plans to
Yeah,
migrate?
yes, definitely. That's what we're aiming towards, and it was started before the whole COVID and
Mm-hmm.
whatnot.
Mm-hmm.
But it's been a slow process
Mm-hmm.
because in some of the areas you get paper daily coming in. You see, so that's an
Mm-hmm.
issue. And then the manpower too, we're relatively small, like under 10 people. So the
Right.
manpower to actually be scanning stuff to keep it in the system, that will be crazy to do. So right now
Right.
we're paper-based mostly, and then we do the retention, and every 7 years we do a cleanup,
Mm-hmm.
right, where we, try to get rid of the paper and whatnot. But
Mm-hmm.
I think my manager wanted us to do this because, like she said today, she said, boy, Moss, we really have to get this record thing under control, because here we were today looking like crazy for a certain document that should have been
Right.
easily accessed if we
Right.
had it on the system.
Mm-hmm.
And we couldn't even find a hard copy. We ended up finding it where we looked in our system where it was scanned and sent out somewhere else. And
Mm-hmm.
I went to the system and I found it.
Wow.
So exactly. So we want to know, well, okay, if we had a general records area where I would have been able to just go right there and find it.
Mm-hmm. So
That
tell
wasn't
me
the case.
something. You're private, you're government, quasi.
Well, okay, we're the Bahamas Cooperative League,
Oh,
the
okay. All
apex
right.
body of all the credit unions, and then we
Oh,
have
okay.
CAL, right? We have CAL, and we have BCLIBL, which is an insurance company, which are the subsidiary companies of
Mm-hmm.
the league.
Okay.
Okay, so I said, see, I work for the league,
Mm-hmm.
but like I said, the insurance, and
Mm-hmm.
then there's CAL,
Mm-hmm.
which are separate entities. But when auditors come, they're
Right.
auditing the three of us. You
Right.
see?
Okay.
So we have a lot of records. And so we have a records management policy in place.
Mm.
But
Okay, that's
like I
good.
said, it hasn't been utilized, I guess, as much as it should have been so far.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
So that's why I'm taking this course, I guess, to help us get that on track
Mm-hmm.
100% now.
Okay, so how y'all have done inventories before in terms of assessing the records that you have?
Yes,
Oh, okay.
yes,
That's
yes.
a start.
So
That's a
like I said, every few years, like right now, I'm actually doing a cleanup of the system because
mm-hmm.
for years and years, things has been that in the system, and every time you just increasing the space on the system, but no
Mm-hmm.
one has been cleaning it up.
Right. And that's very important, because that represents a risk. That's why I speak of a records retention schedule, because that's
Mm-hmm.
important. That's a policy document as well. And what
Uh-huh.
happens is businesses, they require records for a certain period of time. And the greatest request for that information is usually around the time that you create it and you're working on it
Uh-huh.
in process.
Uh-huh.
Eventually, once you've completed that, it may be inactive for a while because you only need to refer to it for one or two times, a few times,
Exactly.
right?
Uh-huh.
And so, in terms of being cost effective and efficient, records you no longer need to follow the protocol of disposition, and that
Mm-hmm.
at the end of the day, once you have used that record, there's
Mm-hmm.
not been marked as something that is permanent because it relates to historical information that the corporate memory needs to show how it's evolved over time, then you need to get rid of it. And especially now when we have so many legislations coming out throughout the world that deal with privacy and
Uh-huh.
security. Okay, so privacy is a big one, because you can't have persons. We have a data commissioner, and so if you're processing information that has people's direct contact information on it, once you have utilized it for your particular purpose, then that record itself needs to be, you don't need to keep that in there, even if it means you've used it, you've done what you had to do, and somehow some people do redactions, etc. They so that information is no longer there for persons to come up. It's a security risk, so
Correct.
where, and then with retention, that also helps you to keep control, like you say, not just adding on space, because then more you have to sift through, that's the longest going to take for you to find the information.
Correct. Yeah.
Yeah.
Well, I just want to raise this issue too. We had an issue, as simple as day-to-day emails. A lot of people, even on your phone, when you get messages on WhatsApp, you don't clean it up. And that takes up a lot of space. Our IT guy had to say, look, you guys need to clean up these emails. You all keep coming to me to purchase more space. If you all clean up your system, take these emails when somebody sends you something, received with thanks. Come on now, just clean it up. Right. And then you will ease up so much space on your system.
Right.
So you will have, and I think that's also a risk, because a lot of times.
And so that's why you see now, when at one time the policies might have been pretty much focused on your paper, but now with the electronic, you need to have an email policy. You need to have some, right, so that persons, they only allowed this space. They can't be calling and asking for more email space, because they ain't delete nothing from they join, and they joined like 15 years ago.
Right. You're correct. You're correct. Yeah.
And even so, the training, in terms of training persons about the fact that you can manage your email better, because only there's some emails, because email wasn't meant to store records. That was a communication in the office, but turn it into a start. When you get a mail from the physical mailbox, you have to open that. You have to take out the letter, read it, do what you have to do with it. So basically, we've lost our sense of handling email as just a communicator, and we use it to store, when we should act, okay, if you open that email and it's something that relates to a specific policy, etc., you can read that. You can actually, because when you send an email and you send that to 5 or 10 different persons, you know the volume you're creating and stuff like that. Okay, so you can save what you need to save. You can take it from the email and save it to the relevant folder. So if you have an email and that email requires a specific action, something to deal with, you should have in your file structure somewhere where that person could then file that email. Okay, and then it can be from the email system, so the box isn't getting clogged up. Right. But there are certain things like that where, as records professionals, we need to help and work with our people. So you need to have that structure in there so that people know what to do. Because at the end of the day, when you look at it, managing the records is not just the records management folks thing. Everyone has a responsibility, because into a company, those are not your records. You're creating corporate records. So those corporate records, so the fact that persons may say, well, oh, I do this and I work on this, and they keep the files there. No, that's not how it should be. So based on the structure, the protocols that's set up for where to place documents, that's how it should be. When you leave the organization, you shouldn't be leaving with the organization's information. There should be something in place to tell persons where that information is to be. The supervisor is responsible for making sure those files, even if it's electronic, they know where that person access is, to pretty much turn those files over to them. And it's just not done. So that's what makes it more difficult to when you have to search. So that the policy itself establishes that groundwork, so that persons know for sure. You have to let persons know it's not your record, it's the company's record. That's a must in your policy. All information created dealing with company business, corporate business, is corporate records, you know. So that's an important part of formulating your policy, that persons know you don't own the company records. And then you get into identifying and laying out your file plan framework, so they know that when you create this type of information, this is where it goes. And you help them understand what's a corporate record versus a non-record. And so non-records end up being things that for general interest, notice, circulations, etc. And then you also have to let people know who are the ultimate, what shall I say, the ultimate owners of the record. So in a like yours, where you have all these different sections and stuff like that, what gets created by XYZ are the official records. So that people, because you know you have to pass around and share information. So if I'm working in IT, and I'm asking my supervisor to process something for me with regard to my vacation time frame. So while I do that, during the time that it's in process, okay, yeah, I need a copy of that, fine. When it goes to HR, they sign off on it, it's approved. That final form is my proof that I can go on vacation. So that's my record copy. But at the day, IT doesn't have to keep a file on my vacation time forms. You can have that maybe for that year for convenience in checking and reconciling. But ultimately, HR is the owner of personnel records. You know, so even though we have in departments where we just for making sure things are in place, if you have to schedule people, etc., we would know vacation times, etc. Ultimately, you're not the one that's going to have to answer when they want to take a tally of how much vacation time that person have, you know. So, like some of the records, some of the emails and stuff dealing with personnel information that may be throughout all departments. But at the end of the day, personnel records are the responsibility of HR.
Okay.
Yeah. So
yeah, but that's our challenge right now. So that's one of the reasons I'm doing this course, to just get a, I guess, use our policy, or use our policy as a guideline, given the information you're giving us now, and see if it's going to work for us, and see if we can maybe add to it and improve on it to make the processes better.
Okay, that's good. And I usually try and help as much as I can. Also, there are websites that relate to different records management associations and groups that I will also be sharing that you can take advantage of. There are lots of resources that you would be able to, like I say, each organization has a specific purpose. And so that's where you focus on in terms of making sure your program works for you, because it's varied, right? Some areas, like I say, may be a small company, and so that one person can basically see the whole spectrum of things. Whereas someone like you have a lot of different arms. So someone who would also need, do you have like records liaisons with those different areas? So that basically it starts with the core. So the records unit or whatever identifies within each particular department or unit that they have to make sure things are okay, things are operating well. They provide the feedback if something's not working right with regard to the components of the records management program. So they would be people that you could use to do an assessment in the various area. You would basically provide the guidelines and the frameworks, what you need to know. They would then, in their different teams, work to get that information and also to provide feedback when things need adjustment.
Okay.
Yeah. So basically you have a core records management unit and most of your people work in that unit.
Well, right now, no.
Okay.
So that's what we're trying to establish. It seems like
Okay.
because we're three separate entities,
Right.
everyone, I guess, manages their own stuff,
Right.
but we're
Mhm.
trying to pool everything together. So at
Okay.
least the important information can
Mhm.
be compiled in one general area.
Right.
You can still have your separate
Mhm.
information for companies, but then
Mhm.
the important stuff, the
Mhm.
policies, the procedures and stuff that we need to keep on hand,
Right.
that has to be generalized. Because like
Mm.
I said, today there was an issue where the internal auditors were trying to track something down. And here it is, if that was in a general area, it wouldn't
You
have
would have
been an
been able
issue.
to find it. Yeah.
Exactly. And
Right.
that's what we want to try get a handle on.
And persons in this profession wear many hats, as you may have seen from the video clip shown earlier.
Yeah.
So
Yeah.
yeah, sometimes it's also very important because then you have to pretty much be that trainer and set aside time, even if it means meeting, when you bring new people on board, nobody speaks to them about general practices about how to create records or anything like that. And underlying, when you have an orientation, I doubt they tell them about the corporate, because if they don't have a program in place, what they're gonna share,
Right.
that's like something when you bring new people into your organization. You're telling them about their benefits, you're telling them about your do's and don'ts, but you're not telling them your process with regard to, or you're not instructing them about the information aspect, because then you're bringing them in, they're now going to be creating your corporate records. And so if they don't know, they don't know. And so sometimes some of that end you up in court.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, because certain things wasn't done, So as we assess and look over, there are just some little things that if we put it in at the start, we end up with a better result. So Miss Colebrook, good evening.
Hi.
How are you?
Good, and you?
I'm fine. So let us hear a little bit about your scenario.
I think everyone touched a bit on my scenario.
Okay, you're in public, private, quasi.
I'm private.
Oh, you're private. Okay.
Yes. So the issue that we're having is, well, we're completely digitized now.
Oh, that's good.
But we have an issue with the archive, where it's not really organized, and to find stuff is like a nightmare. So we are trying to, we launched a project maybe last year, trying to organize everything and make sure each department has their own record. Even though it's centralized within the client documentation area, each department needs to be able to reference which box goes to which department, which box number, all of that stuff. So that's the issue that we're having. And then also you spoke about the updates to the old files, with them being integrated into the new system. That's another project that we'll be launching soon as well. But basically we are paperless. except for when we absolutely have to print something. And then our document files are still, even though they're digital now, we still have the hard copies.
Okay. Okay.
Because
Let me ask you something. You're using a document management system?
Yes.
Okay. So can I ask the name?
It's called Documentum.
Documentum. Okay. So that's one of a slew of solutions out there that person can use to go digital. And so basically capturing the images and you're putting them into a repository. Persons should be able to then go and search afterwards, and they should be able to find their documents and attach them to whatever they're. So certain things with the document, because you have document imaging systems, you have records management systems, and sometimes there's just a bit of a difference in what they're capable of. So like with the document management system, that primarily helps you in terms of the workflow. So it has good stuff in to help connect with workflow. With the records management system, it's looking at the whole life cycle. So it's looking at from you create it, it's looking at what's up for disposition. So some of the things that you can do with a records management system, you probably won't get it in a document management system, because with a records management system, it should be able to tie into your retention time frame. Once you create your documents within a specified format that has coding to the retention, when a document, the time frame is up in a record management software, that would be, you would be able to get like listings of documents up for disposition that you can then send to the relevant persons to sign off before it's destroyed. You know, so when we get into the technology aspect, we'll be looking at some of the types of solutions that are out there and help persons to figure out some of the questions they would ask. Because when you go and you say, I need help because I need to go digital, there are tons of vendors out there, and they're all going to tell you, oh, this product works great and this is the best solution and what have you. But it's up to you, given the fact that you know what you are responsible for keeping in place, what you're responsible for facilitating reports on, etc. You would be able to be specific with them and tell them what you want, and then make a choice based on the ones that are closest, because you're not going to get something that's 100% perfect, you know, but you want to be that well versed enough to not let them just push anything on you.
Right.
So your challenge now is you have all this information already in the electronic realm, but you need to do more classification and categorization.
Right.
Okay. Okay.
Yeah.
All right. So like I say, I will be sharing a lot of online resources that persons can look at and basically help you to identify your strengths and weaknesses in this area. Okay, so our text is not a big text. And like I say, it's called Records and Information Management Fundamentals of Professional Practice. So it goes into some things like, there's a general interview session, but there's a general overview about records management, but primarily it talks about preparing the retention schedules. It talks about record centers, although that really applies for persons who still have tons of paper that they manage offsite. And it has good information about the technologies. It also goes into stuff like vital records, managing active paper records, and your digital documents. Okay, so the text itself, it's not a long read. It has a glossary at the back with some of the official terms when we speak about records management. It also has a summary of points. So that's a good thing. And pretty much when we talk about quizzes, etc., like I said, it would pretty much be multiple choice. And we will also, like I said, want you to get a feel, because in this profession, you have to do analysis, etc. And so at this level, basically what we want to do is pretty much understand the life cycle. That's important for us to understand, because within each phase of the life cycle, you get to apply a specific solution, so it isn't like you take one broad brush and paint everything. Depending on what stage the record is at, requires a different approach. And so this evening, Miguel, okay, he's not answering, but he will definitely touch bases with you guys with regard to getting the records and information management text. He will check on that. But also in the meantime, I will provide notes. So I'll send the email with regard to, for this first section, where we want to understand what is a record, why it's important in society, and the values of the records. I will send you a outline with the information, the core things that would have come out in some of the conversations we've had this evening. This night being our first, and getting a feel of person's expectations and also the challenges that they're having, was exactly that, trying to understand and be able to share information that would help with regard to the current challenges that persons would have identified that they face. So like Roll and Wilson, they're coming into this out of a crisis mode. So right now they need some assessment done, and they need to get a framework together so that going forward, they can basically, one, ensure that they know what records they have, they know where they are, they know basically who is handling what. They need to probably look at their team. And like I was indicating, it's not something that you can do alone. You do need to collaborate. You need to collaborate with some important persons like legal, like your audit, because these are the people that will help you to make sure your program is what we would call a viable program. Okay, so you don't want it, and a lot of times you end up with a program that is just that, it's on the paper. You don't just want that. You want to be able to have that program implemented, because at the end of the day, if anything happens and it relates to having to produce records and you have to go to court, they're going to look at all of that. They're going to look at, does this organization actually have something in place? or are they just doing things hodgepodge ad hoc? Because they've been hit with a fine or charge, is it that that's why they're now coming forward to then try and present this front like they have things together, like they have something organized? So you don't want to be caught in that situation. So you want to be able to show that you have a documented program and that it's operating. And so one of the things that I will send out as an attachment would be the components of a records management program. And you can't expect to get it all done at once. But like I say, you make starts, you make a progression towards that ultimate goal. So if right now you don't have a policy, if you've never done an assessment, if you don't have a retention schedule, that's fine. We're gonna look at what each of these documents contain, how they help us, etc. And from that, you can start tweaking. So even if it means we can have some samples, we can look at samples, and then you can tweak and see if that's something that you can work with, you know. But ultimately, buy-in from senior management is important, okay? And even though you're part of the records management team, etc., if you're working with others and you're working with departments and units, there's something called performance assessments. And on those performance assessments, people should be held accountable. And what I mean by that is that if you're doing appraisals to say how people are performing, and there's a department, there's a manager, etc., and responsibility for records, like I say, it trickles down. So it starts from the top down. So that department manager is ultimately responsible for the information created and generated by that department. So whoever is that department manager's boss and who is writing his performance guide or what have you, something should be in that manager's guide that indicates he has a responsibility for ensuring that whatever those records management fundamental frameworks are, he's to ensure that happens within his unit, within his organization. So he has to have that, like I say, that liaison person who is reporting to the records management area unit, whatever. Sometimes you find it's placed in different areas. Some people may have it under IT. Some persons may have it with legal, you know, but based on your structure, you determine the best fit, somewhere that's going to give it the support that it needs to be able to be executed. So you don't want to put it under a unit or a department that's not interested or that won't be connected to that function. And sometimes that's the challenge that most people have and can't get the buy-in, although they may have done their assessments, etc. If you don't have that top management support, I'm not going to say it's impossible, but what I'm going to say is it makes it very difficult to implement your program. And so this evening, I just wanted to find out, we don't usually take a break. We've been going straight through. So I'm proposing that basically if we start at 6, 8, and it's supposed to be until 9, I can say we can probably wrap up for the remainder of the times. Does half an hour before sound okay? So that means we would be from 6 to 8:30.
It's good for me.
Pardon me?
It's good for me.
Okay.
Me as well.
That's fine.
Yes, ma'am.
So we can go
We'll
from
just go
6.
through without a break until 8:30.
Right,
Okay, that's
Yeah,
fine.
that's fine.
right. Okay,
I have a
so
quick question, Ms. Tucker. The book you mentioned, that will be provided to us soft
that's what I
copy?
was I was just verifying with Miguel because I know he was trying to order it.
Okay,
Right. So I think you will get communication from him with regard to the book, but also in the meantime, pertinent stuff, like I said, I can probably, since we're using it for educational purposes for a course, I know I can probably take an excerpt of something that I feel would be very important for you guys.
okay.
Okay, so you can expect an email from me tomorrow, which will basically um, provide information on what is records management and a record. And so when we come next week, we'll be going on to the components of the program. But if there are any questions concerning the material that I am going to share, you can before we get into that, you can ask or you can email me as well. Once I send you the handout notes, you can, if there are any questions or concerns, you can you can email me, or if it's something individually, if they're like each person express their concerns, and based on the material I share, if you need like further information or you would like some more samples or directions in terms of, especially with like vendors who provide services. Here in the Bahamas, we're very limited, but there are some major vendors that service clients all over the world, and we'd be able to at least I'd be able to give you some contacts and also share some information on if you want further professional development. We can always join associations, etc., that allow us to share, at least get more updates on their conferences, etc. And that also provides good support. You get to network and meet people who have been there, like I say, done that, and help you get past the hurdles. In the beginning, it's kind of difficult, and like I say, the whole idea of records management over the years, pretty much when you said that, and person only think of filing, and they think of filing in terms of physical, just filing. That is not records management. That's a component, okay? But filing is not records management. And that's like one of the biggest challenges or hurdles that I found throughout the course of my years in this profession. Persons misunderstanding what records management entails. So when they talk about records management, they're talking about a component of it, because they're only talking about persons going to file information. And it's more to it. It involves all aspects, from the time you create a record to when that record is ultimately disposed of. Things have to happen, things are involved, because at the end of the day, improper records management exposes companies and corporations to significant risks. You have risk of fraud, you have risk with regard to inappropriate disclosure, you have things like not only persons who should not have access to information having it, but you also risk, especially in the electronic environment, persons can get into your system. You can be hacked. Okay, you've heard of breaches, and breaches with companies that have millions. You had Target had breaches. Okay, and so ultimately all we're trying to say is that good records management practices reduces those risks. So I just wanted to find out whether there are any further questions or queries or things that you would like for me to provide you with a bit more information on before tonight ends.
I just have a question, please, on the records management. What systems do you use? Is it Access or Excel, or is it a specialized system?
Okay, for records management, you have different vendors that promote products that are capable of records management duty. So like Excel and Access, those Microsoft tools, they're part of what we would call unstructured content. So now if you have a system like a database system where you actually have the data in specific fields, etc., that's your structured data, and that's easy to manage. For records management, those things like the Excel and the Word document and the PowerPoint, all of those are part of the unstructured data realm. Okay, so as records managers, that's like the biggest challenge, because when you have data neat in a database, etc., that's much easier to work with than everyone who's using the machine and creating and storing their documents in various places. So as records managers, those are the challenging areas, the unstructured data, and pretty much more than 50% of those information that you are generating or seeing persons within the company generate is in unstructured format, because people are using Word, Excel, PowerPoint, etc.
Right.
Right. And so they're putting it where they want to put it if you don't tell them. And telling them relates to you having a policy and a file plan. And you're not going to know what you need to set up if you don't do an assessment first, if you don't inventory and see what you have. You know, but
Right.
you have, like, there's Documentum, you have things like Open Text, you have there's another company that does records management software. I can't think of their names right now, but I'll be able to probably provide some links for some vendors, and they're very, you visit their sites, they're quite friendly and helpful. So they even do demos so you can see how the product works. But I say before we even get to choosing vendors for products, we really need to know what it is we want, so that you don't get something. You can pay. Sometimes I've found that you need a lot of bells and whistles depending on the type of organization you're in. And sometimes the vendors sell you all those little flashy things. And then when you get it, you realize, gee, this over here would only cost about $500 doing more than this over here, but I paid $20,000 for. So the best thing to do is understand your needs. And when you understand your needs, then you can make that best selection, that best fit.
Okay.
Yeah. But there, like I say, there's so many tools out there. That's important, because then you get to know exactly which one does what you want it to do. You know, you can then rate them. And that's a whole other process in terms of the technologies. So, but your unstructured content, that's the biggest challenge for records managers, because you got versioning in there, you got issues with regard to who created what, where to store it. And like I say, all of those things are what you want to address when you talk about your fundamentals. And that's why something like records management comes under governance best, because under governance, you're setting up those policies, procedures, and processes that are documented. And that's what you need. You need documentation. So it's a lot to think about. It's a lot to think about, but like I say, once you understand the basic cycle for the records, it's easy to apply your various solutions, what you need to do at which point. It's involved. Anyone here does project management a lot?
No.
No, because it's good to have somebody who can help you, because a lot of your stuff will work out to be projects. You take them in projects. Like they say, how do you eat an elephant? One bite at a time. And basically, when you look at what's involved in really bringing your organization up to speed with records management, especially in instances where it's been neglected for so long, it's not an easy thing. And so you got to celebrate your little victories. So once you go and you do an assessment and you see what's there, what's facing you, you pat yourself on the back for completing that assessment. And from that assessment, you basically work on updating your immediate supervisor or whoever. Or if it works good too if you put a steering committee in place. If you get a team together that consists of maybe someone from legal, someone from IT, someone from audit. If you have an info security person, you have them in there, and one of your senior managers team. If you get like a committee together and basically you involve them as you do these different stages. So for your assessment, and that committee, you want to use them to keep you focused on the goal and guide you in terms of making you aware of things like legal. Audit is very good. Audit is good for helping you to put in the controls you need. So at the end of the day, when you develop a process, it has the controls necessary to make sure things have integrity, and there's that tracking involved. So with audit, they love that. So if you have a automated system in place, they want to know that tracking is in there, so you can see when somebody touches a record, or did they edit it and stuff like that. So your system has to have good auditing capabilities to show who does what and when. Timestamps and things like that, very, very important to audit. So does that help you, Blair?
Yes, thank you.
Okay, good. Okay, so I think I need to get the general information out in terms of what is records management, so that you guys can read that over the weekend. And basically, once I send it to you, like I say, my email address will be there. And if there are any concerns, any more details you need me to get, then I will provide that. So when we come on next week, Thursday, we're pretty much just wrapping up what is records management and why it's important. Okay, and then we can get into the nitty gritty of what a records management program has. And then we'd be taking it further in terms of when we look at the different components, then we'd be able to just link what needs to be done, some of the tasks with each one of those components. Is that okay?
Yes, ma'am.
Yes,
Okay.
ma'am.
Okay, that's good. So we get an early night tonight, but for next week, Thursday, and going forward, we'd basically be online until 8:30.
Okay.
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 Yes. And thank you guys so much for deciding to stick with. And you know what I forgot to mention, this is April, the month of records and information management awareness. So if you were to go online, I'm sure you'd see lots and lots of stuff with relation to persons who have chapters. We have organizations like myself. Our unit has an awareness for staff, so we use that time to share information with regard to some of the processes and some of the things we're trying to get them to adopt. So like today we had Talk Up Tuesday, and for Talk Up Tuesday, our topic was name that file, and it focused on the all of the conventions and standards around proper naming of files and records. So just a little plug to say, you know, that's one of the things that I was talking about when I say part of your duty involves creating awareness around what you're trying to do. So even if you're getting there, you don't have a program yet, but some of the areas that you're having challenges with, and you already know how you want those things handled, you can use that as time to create awareness within your various units. Fun activities as well. We last year we had a quote a Jeopardy taken after Jeopardy. So we had various categories, and those categories focused on the concepts that we were getting people familiarized with, and we gave prizes. So one of our prizes was like a fire stick, and we had speakers and different things, but just encouraged because you had to be online. So it wasn't like we could meet and have booths and share different information. So basically we had online activities, and we engaged in a Jeopardy game, and whoever won the game got the grand prize. And we had like prizes for the persons who attended. You know, you can give a prize for the first person to log on. Maybe you have somebody who's very interactive in the session, so you give a prize. But we have to find ways to incentivize persons to get on board, because number one, it is a very important part of the business functions. And also we know that a lot of times it ain't a what they call a quote a sexy subject. So ain't nobody really want to hear too much about records management. And so we have to make it palatable. So with that said, I just thank you guys for coming again, and look forward to seeing you again on Thursday. So good night, all.
Good night.
Good night.
Good
Take care.
night.
Everyone's home, right? Everyone's home. Nobody have to drive anywhere.
Right at home.
Yeah,
Oh,
I'm
that's
home.
good. Okay. Take care. Be safe. Bye.
Okay.
Have a good night, Mom. Thank you.
Okay. Good night, Roll.
Good night.
Good night. Take care. Miguel. Miguel.